Welcome, Frank.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I am living the dream.
Yes, that is
Our
what we like to
department's
hear.
buying us pizza at 12:30.
Yes, even better. From where? Shields or
Good
Jets?
question. I don't know.
I
Hey,
mean,
Frank.
Hi, Kevin.
I was gonna, I was gonna say there's no such thing as bad pizza, so you cannot go wrong with free pizza.
Well,
That's
there is
good.
such bad thing. I lived in Mongolia for 4 years, and there's bad pizza there.
Um, so we're just kind of waiting for other people to join us. We'll get started here at noon, to kind of be respectful of everybody's time. But kind of I'll begin. The presentation should be around 10 to 15 minutes. That way we can leave some time for break for you to ask question or for others to ask questions. Um, uh, Wait for others to ask questions. The presentation portion is being recorded. Um, but kind of feel free to raise your hand, ask a question if that's okay with you, Kevin, during your if not,
Sure.
we can or feel free to put your question in the chat and then that way we can get to it during the question and answer session. Um, or during the question and answer session, feel free to come off of mute and um, introduce yourself and um, go ahead and ask your question. But we will go ahead and get started since it's noon. My name is Drew Moser, and I am an educational development specialist here with the Office for Teaching and Learning. And today we are presenting a virtual lunch and learn series on global learning. Joining us today is Kevin Ketels, who I will introduce here in a moment, or I will let him introduce himself here in a moment. Excuse me. Um, but yes. So kind of a quick run through on what global learning is. Students are able to uh, students' analysis and engagement with independent global systems and their implications for their understand and engage with interdependent global systems and how they are and their implications for not only their lives but our planet. Global learning also enhances students' understanding of their identity, their community, um, their ethics, and perspective taking in an interconnected world. And also, are going to be using the value rubric for this series created by the American Associates of Colleges and Universities that talks about different ways to evaluate student learning across a program. I will put a link to that rubric in the chat kind of as we go through. Um, and kind of the basics of kind of understanding what global systems are. They're a natural system, either biological, chemical, or like physical, as well as human systems. So we'll talk about the cultures, the economics, the political systems, um, and how these systems kind of influence our lives. According to the AAC&U, students need to understand how these global and human systems are influenced and created, kind of what the consequences are, and how these systems affect the world, and also how these systems can be changed. So joining us today is Kevin Ketels, Associate Professor of Teaching and Global Supply Chain Management. Kevin, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Andrew. All right, let's get started. I think I'm going to share some slides. So let's see if I can do that.
You should be able to.
All right. Okay, can everybody see slides? You can see the slides, the teaching a global perspective. Just want to make sure.
Yep.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, this is, thank you for having me, and glad to talk about what I think is a really interesting and important topic. This is my students in myself in Berlin. And here we are in Amsterdam. So I've led study abroad for 4 years in the Netherlands, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Poland, Czech Republic. And next year, I'm going to be leading a study abroad in Paris, Barcelona, and Madrid. And I teach a class in global supply chain management, and there's a significant discussion of global issues, topics that we cover. I'll share in just a moment, and also what's happening in the world is very relevant in that class. But I think it's not just that class, but it's all the classes that I teach that I include global content and what's happening in the world today. And I think it's really important to have that perspective. So, I mean, the reason why I do this in my classes is that, I teach in the business school, and from a business perspective, the management of global teams and operations, it's really important to have that international perspective. But I'll tell you secretly that why I do it, and I do much more than what's available in our textbooks as an example, or the standard learning materials, is that I think it's important for students to increase their self-awareness and also understand that there are very different perspectives globally, all around the world. And it's important for them to understand it, and for them to know that our perspective is not the only one, or necessarily the right one, that different countries, different cultures have different values and different perspectives and different things that are important to them. The next slide, I'm going to just talk about the topics that we share in class. But before I do that, I do a significant part of my classes incorporates global contacts. And I, of course, have an advantage because I visit a lot of countries in Europe through study abroad. But that's not the only way to make these contacts. I've made a lot of contacts other ways. Like we have visiting faculty that come through programs offered by the Office of International Programs. Like I've had visiting faculty through faculty from Africa and from Asia that have visited the business school. And I know that they, these types of programs, they visit other schools at the university. I've made contacts there, and that has led to collaborations. There are also Erasmus grants for faculty exchange that's offered by the European Union. I've been able to travel to Poland and the Netherlands on faculty exchanges, and the whole purpose of doing those is to exchange ideas, collaborate, do research, and put on programs, which I'll give you some ideas of what it is that we do. There are Fulbright scholarships, and I also leverage my own professional network and personal network. Friends I went to grad school with, LinkedIn, I will often post. Like right now, I have a post on LinkedIn saying that I'm looking for international contacts in Paris, Barcelona, and Spain. And I've already had folks who have responded and put me in contact with some very interesting people. But I will also cold call and email folks. Like a cold call, I'll ask for the phone number of an organization, and like the main phone number, I'll call the main number, and I'll just ask for a person that I've identified in LinkedIn, and leave a message and say, hey, are you interested in speaking or collaborating? And I've done this many, many times, and it's not always successful. In fact, maybe most of the time it's not successful, but it's been successful just enough that I continue doing it, and it continues to add richness and to my courses and my teaching. I have, ever since COVID, our capabilities as far as Zoom and Microsoft Teams have increased tremendously. And the real benefit to this is that I have guest speakers from all over the world. I typically invite them during a class, but when I do that, I'll put together a little flyer, and it's not hard to do at all. And I'll invite the rest of the business school or the rest of the university community and anyone who wants to sit in and watch these guest speakers. I partner with international university faculty. So I've done this with faculty in India, Germany, the Netherlands, and done joint case study competitions. So basically, we'll write up a case study and we'll offer it to students and assign teams that are joint teams in my class and the international class. So there would typically be 2 students from Wayne State and 2 students from, in my past, it's been the Netherlands, Poland, and India, and they collaborate. And so throughout the course of the semester, 4 students would get together internationally, and they can use Zoom or Teams or whatever technology that they want to use to collaborate and put together a presentation. And what we've done is myself and the faculty member from the other university internationally, and we'll even incorporate some business professionals. We'll judge the presentations that they provide, and we'll pick the top 3 or 4 to present to a joint class. And then we'll select what we would consider the winner. So it's not as elaborate as many competitions that we run and others run, but it gets students really getting to know each other. They're meeting multiple times. They're learning about each other. Some of the questions that I ask in the case study are just about each other, so that there's this interaction that takes place. So that's the most complex one that I do with faculty from other universities. Something that's much less complex, if there are some challenges in setting it up and timing and stuff like that, is that I'll offer a survey. And it's a survey about communication, leadership, management, current events, things like this. We'll ask students from each school to complete the survey, and then we'll get all the survey results, and then we'll present them to a joint class, and we'll discuss what do we have that are the traits that we have that are similar, and what's different, and why do we think they're similar and or different. And sometimes I've been able to get a speaker on multicultural issues who would also speak at the same time and also comment about the survey. And that's a much easier one to do. But also I found that it contributes a lot of value to the classes that I've taught, and students also enjoy it. There's less commitment from it. When doing these types of programs, one of the challenges that sometimes can creep up is scheduling all your students to be able to meet at the same time. With India, it was a real challenge because of the time difference. And so what we did was we had, I can't remember if it was late at night or in the morning, but we had several of their students who would join our class, and then we'd have several of my students that would join their class, basically volunteering to be up at night or early in the morning or something like that, is what we would do. So that's how I've been able to have some interactions internationally. And remember, not all of these contacts come from study abroad. I've met faculty, like programs through the Office of International Programs, faculty who've just come here to visit. And I've been able to set up these programs with them as well. And when they return home, we're able to do this and have great international exposure for our students and for their students, and really have insight into different perspectives. So these are the topics that I'll typically talk about in class. The global supply chain class that I teach, I think has all of these. And then the other classes I teach has some mix of these. But we talk about culture, the difference in attitudes, values, morals, goals, customs shared by a society, language, the impact on business operations, the impact on identity that happens, and like what happens when global corporations force everybody to speak English, and what's the impact on native speakers of their own language, and how does that impact their interactions as they're conducting business. The role of religion and the value system that comes from that, via their government, traditions, social interactions, gender roles. The dynamics of geography, the proximity, how proximity impacts trade, geopolitics. I love talking about that topic, cross-cultural communication, um, talking about those challenges, current events. So I have students in all my classes do current events, and oftentimes what I'll do is I'll select current events for students to present every class, and I often pick current events that have global implications, and we talk through it. What's the perspective of the country where this is taking place? What's the perspective of that country versus the United States, and how do we differ? How are our values different? We also talk about managing international teams. What's it like for expats who have taken roles or jobs overseas, and what's the challenge of that? And then also I include a lecture on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the importance of for companies to best build effective teams and to best leverage all the talent that they have at their companies, and to avoid implicit bias. This management strategy for building the best team that you can and the strongest company that you can. So that's, in a nutshell, how I make the contacts, how I reach out, both here and abroad, and sort of the topics that I try to incorporate into my classes. But I think a lot of these things can be incorporated in any class, no matter what your major, and no matter what the class. I think there's benefits to students, and real ways to make it applicable. So with that, if anyone has any thoughts or comments or questions or anything, I'd be happy to answer it and share what I do, or share any perspective that I might have. Or if you just want to share what it is that you're doing, that would be cool too.
Yeah, kind of before we get to that, hmm, let me just kind of wrap up our PowerPoint here, just because we don't, again, the goal, thank you again, Kevin, thank you for that wonderful presentation. But kind of before we get to the question and answer portion, I just have a couple more kind of slides to share with everybody. You are screen sharing. Can everybody see my slides?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so kind of if we look at we have here a couple of resources that we can share. Here talking about, again, the global value rubric, kind of the definitions of um, global learning, the link to the Wayne State Office of International Programs, and the OT, and as long as a link to our virtual resource hub. Again, I'll share this slide deck out kind of after the meeting, and also in the chat, I've included a link to the AAC&U Global Learning rubric. So again, thank you everybody for coming today. I'm going to now go ahead and stop sharing my screen and end the recording portion of our lunch and learn today. Um,